everyone, this is your guided reading lesson for Wednesday, and we're going to be looking at the questions and answers to the reading text, The Explorer. So by now I hope you have read the text, you found some words and definitions that you're not too sure about. I hope that you've answered the questions yesterday, and now we're going to be looking at the answers that I expect. So if you've not done the answers already, you can pause the screen here and you can have a go. I've put these on the screen so you can just remind yourself of the questions, but we're going to just carry on and explain what the answers should be. Okay, so number one is talking about Fred and how we know what has happened to him, or what do we think has happened to him. So we can't be specific, we don't really know, we can only infer from the text, and it's only 1 mark. So I'm looking for something about Fred being in an accident, something happening, maybe a plane crash is the key word that I'm looking for. And the bit from the text that I need you to have found is because the little aeroplane was in the trees. So obviously that infers to me that there's been a crash. There's no aeroplane that usually just lands in a tree on purpose. And then obviously with all the fire and the spitting of the fire and the explosion sounds and the branches falling, that seems to me that the plane has gone into the tree, obviously by mistake, and has caused a big crash. So I think obviously the plane crash has happened. Fred's been maybe in the plane crash, maybe he was in the plane and he escaped, and then that infers to me that something has happened. So number 2, there are also lots of pieces of evidence to say that Fred is hurt. So you only needed 2, and you could have had any of the following. About Fred smacking his head on something hard, you could have quoted. The hair on his arms were singed, which means burnt, so obviously that would be quite hurting him. You could have had that his eyebrows were charred and came away, so his eyebrows were also burnt, and when he pulled at them they came from his face, so that would be quite painful. And then also the main one probably that you would have found is that he talks about a vicious pain in his back and neck, and that his arms are feeling foreign and they're not attached to him, so maybe he's hurt his back or neck in the process of the crash. So you only need 2 of those to get 2 marks. So I've just done quite a lot of them, but if you've got 2 of them, you get your 2 marks. Now number 3, how do we know that when the branch falls, what happens to Fred, and what does it suggest about him, that sentence? So I think it obviously suggests that Fred is panicked, because he knew that if he was still standing in the spot just seconds before, that the branch would have landed on him and killed him. So that kind of gave him a sense of realization that it's kind of life or death in this situation. It made him feel sick, because it talks about the bile coming up from his stomach, which is like a sick alkaline acidy thing that your stomach has when your stomach is empty. So it shows me that he's not eaten in a while, and the bile coming up makes him feel sick, and also telling us that he wants to run as fast and wild. It just tells me he's scared, he wants to run as far away as he can, he wants to escape this situation that he's in. So that's just 1 mark. If you've got something along those lines, then you can mark it yourself. Number 4, a synonym for cascade. So cascade means to be a fall. So falling down, a waterfall, it means like water falling. So it could be chute, flows, torrent, fast flowing, could be any of the things that I wrote above. So if you've put fall down, you can give yourself a mark. If you've put waterfall, this was probably a word that you found a dictionary definition on from Google. So if you put something along those lines, then you can get that mark. So number 5 was a bit of a tricky one. The text uses all 5 senses. So I've found lots of examples. You only need 1 of each to get the marks. So it's a 3-mark question. To get 3 marks, you need to get 1 example for all of the 5 senses. To get 2 marks, you need to get 3 examples of the 5 senses, and to get 1 mark, you need to get 2 examples. Okay? So there's lots of ones that you could have used. You could have used any on the screen that you can see right now. So I'll leave it to you to have a little read through. So for example, on the taste, you could have had the bile, or you could feel his charred eyebrows. He could feel the pain in his neck. he could see is probably the most easiest one because it describes such a vivid image of what is around him. So the smoke, the aeroplane, the trees. So just one for each of the 5 senses and you will get the 3 marks. Number 6, so personification, that is talking about giving an object or a thing a human quality. So the fire called back in response would be an example of one, because a fire obviously can't speak, can't call anybody, can't talk back to you. So that obviously tells us and gives us imagery that the fire is roaring back at him, making a really loud sound. The branch spat red. Obviously branches can't spit, so that tells me that the fire kind of came out of nowhere. It came from the branch like it was being spat at. Really nice imagery. And I've also got trees reaching into the sky. So trees obviously grow towards the sky, but if they're reaching, that makes a point of an image in my head of them really like growing so tall, and they're like really kind of lanky in a way. Their branches are all facing upwards, they're reaching towards the clouds. So there's 3 that you could have picked, and I just need you to pick 2, and you get 1 mark for each of the correct one you have done. Number 7, we talk about why Fred hurled the rock. I think it's simply because he's scared. He thinks he's alone, so when he hears a voice, he gets scared, and this tells me that also his senses, when it talks about his ears are ringing and he can't hear anything, so he's a bit discombobulated, which means he's a bit confused. So if he hears a sound, someone saying something to him, he would probably get really confused, and he wants to protect himself and defend himself whilst he's feeling really weak and poorly and sore and not knowing what's going on. So without even realising, he wants to protect himself, so he's got a rock for defence and he wants to throw it. So you could have had anything along those lines for that 1 mark. And then this short snappy sentence about he tried not to exhale, for 1 mark again, you need to tell me that when you try not to exhale, you're wanting not to make a sound, because if you exhale, it's a small sound, but it does make a sound. And that shows me that it's scared because he doesn't want anybody to know that he's there. So it tells me he's terrified, he doesn't want to be seen, and therefore he doesn't even want to make the smallest of sounds. So just like you, when you're like trying not to laugh or you're trying not to make a sound, you might cover your mouth. He's doing the same thing. He feels pressured not to make a noise because he doesn't know who is there. So you could have had anything along those lines. And then finally for number 9, it's completely up to you. You need to make a sensible prediction. So it could be anything along the lines of that they go to look at the aeroplane, they become friends, they could start fighting because they are against each other maybe. But from the sentence, for God's sake, don't throw things, shows me that she's obviously quite mature maybe, that she doesn't want to fight, that she's wanting to make friends with him. So anything along the lines of a prediction that you think is going to happen next is completely for 1 mark. What I don't want is a kind of silly answer or something that's really not going to happen. So if you said my prediction is that they both get in the rocket ship and fly to the moon, well, where does it tell me about the rocket ship? Why is that? That's nothing about the text. So you need to make a sensible prediction about what you think will happen next. So that is the answers for the reading text of The Explorer. It's out of 13, so count up what you've got and then send them in to us on Dojo with your marks and your answers. I hope you've enjoyed it. I really, really like this text and I'd really recommend you reading it. It's such a good text and it's won loads of awards, and those of you that are really like that adventure kind of story, similar to the Phoenix Code, quite a bit of a what's going to happen next, bit of a mystery story, it's really, really good. So I hope you've enjoyed this week, and good, yeah, thank you.